Today we'll be going over a small article outlining some interesting news about the PlayStation 6. So this is from Insider Gaming on Tom Henderson to be more specific. So essentially from the title here, you can see the PlayStation 6 has two SoCs in development. So what is an SoC for those uninitiated? SoC stands for System on a Chip. So pretty much it's the brains, the full brains, the CPU, GPU, any other connections required for input output, of an entire system. SoCs have existed for a long time. You have them in phones and such, and also they've been in game consoles since I think the PS4 era. So before then, the PlayStation 3 had a separate CPU and GPU by Cell and RSX respectively. And then before that, it was the PS2, a motion engine and graphic synthesizer. And then, Xbox used off the shelf parts at the time. Same with Nintendo. But yeah, anyway. So what's interesting here, though, is that there are two SoCs in development. So usually you'd think that there would only be one considered for the new console. But these production timelines take a while, and there's a lot that engineers have to consider and solve here. But the fact that they have two in development is pretty telling that there are most likely going to be two different SKUs when the PlayStation 6 launches. Now, we don't necessarily know what that means in terms of are there necessarily going to be two home consoles, or is it going to be one home console and a handheld, which is seeming kind of likely as the article goes over, and also from other rumors we've heard, Xbox is likely trying to do an approach where they release a home console and then something like a Steam Deck style handheld, mainly because of the handheld market pretty much like booming right now. There's so many companies jumping on that trend. I guess I hesitate to say trend, but it kind of feels that way. As the Steam Deck came out, it had like a really large following right off the bat, and it's only gotten more popular. And companies like Asus with their ROG Ally and MSI and Lenovo and so many other OEM companies out there putting out handheld gaming devices because it's really popular now. So what this goes over is that, let's see right here. Right, so I kind of went over this. It's unclear what exactly this means for the console. So if in the event that Sony does release two home consoles, so they did end up doing this generation with the PlayStation 5 in terms of the digital edition and the regular disc console. However, those use the same SoC. Like they were the exact same gaming experience, minus optical media, of course, on the digital edition. But you got the same exact experience depending on which, or no matter which console you chose. However, Xbox did the different approach. They had the Series X, which was the direct PS5 competitor, and then they had the Series S, which was $200 less. So it was $300, far more affordable, but also less power. Of course, that makes sense, and also only digital at the time. Um, yeah, so it could be interesting to see how Sony goes about this. I think there are rumors that PlayStation is considering I guess I could call it a true handheld, so one that actually does all the processing power on the handheld rather than something like they released the PlayStation Portal, which is just what is it, a streaming device. So you still need a PS5 to actually run the game, but then all you need after that is just the Wi-Fi connection to be able to stream it to that PlayStation Portal. But I think it would be really interesting for Sony to revisit the just like the handheld market. I think there's a lot of us that have really fond memories of the PSP, the PS Vita, that died far too early. But yeah, the PSP era was really, Sony was really in their stride at that time, and it was really fun. And it very much could be possible. AMD does power pretty much all of the, or not all of them, minus the MSI, but most of the current popular handhelds that either run SteamOS or PC, and they're either in a bespoke form, such as in the Steam Deck, where it's like Valve's own custom SoC, however, using AMD components, versus something like the ROG Ally, which uses an existing chip. I think it's the Z1, the Ryzen Z1, and the Ryzen Z1 Extreme. So there's two different variants of the Ally. But that's just a chip that's been designed and released by AMD rather than Asus actually trying to get like a custom solution out there. But if Sony is going that route, then they certainly are working on a custom solution. Now, what does that necessarily mean for that console itself? I don't know. I figure most people don't really know. Will it be able to run PS5 games natively? Maybe, by the time 2028, or 2027, 2028 comes around, then AMD could probably have some sort of super powerful but still very efficient SoC that can run PS5 games in a mobile setting. That would be pretty awesome. I think that would be very amazing. But I think that's gonna be a, how do I say? It'll be difficult to get that to a price that I guess consumers would be okay with. But who knows? With the PS5 Pro being $700, I guess Sony's trying to testing the bar to see how that console can survive. And then who knows? Maybe the PS6 will also release at $700 or maybe $800 or something, and then they'll have this handheld that's only $500. But honestly, $500 in this space, it's still kind of expensive. But then you also have handhelds like the ROG Ally around the $600 to $700 mark, though also regularly going on sale by like $100 or so. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting next generation. But yeah, for PlayStation, it's at least 3 to 4 years away. I think most of the reports say around 2028. Um, but I guess it could be 2027 because other rumors are saying that Xbox is looking to release far earlier than Sony by at least a year, I think. So they're probably targeting 2026, 2027, but we shall see. But as for this article, it's pretty short, as you can see here. The only other things it really goes over are, let's see. Yeah, so at the moment, I'll just quote this as is. At the moment, Insider Gaming hasn't been able to verify their information to its reporting standards due to the nature of hardware development and the verification needed between multiple sources. So this is, essentially what this is saying is take this with a grain of salt, or, a very, very big grain of salt. But I think at the point for getting a rumor such like that from Kepler L2, which is also a very notable leaker, especially for computer hardware, it's in the probable landscape. The scope is probable of this being a case. But again, like, we don't know if that's going to mean that there's going to be a cheap PlayStation 6 and an expensive PlayStation 6, or if there's going to be a base PlayStation 6 and then a handheld. We don't know. But my money is on Sony coming out the gates with a home console and a mobile console. I don't know if that mobile console is probably going to be targeting PlayStation 6 specs, or I mean enough to somewhat run the games, maybe at PS5 level. It could be possible, like I said earlier, with AMD advancing their technology. Technology advances very quickly in 4 years. Well, I guess more realistically, it would be around 2.5 at most, for them to finalize the spec and all that before they send things to production. But yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. Let me know what you guys think. I think this is very interesting. Of course, the image here, that also what I'm using for my thumbnail. It's just a mock-up. Here, there's nothing. We don't know anything about what the device looks like, anything about the power profile, anything about anything really. We don't even have the details of any of the SoCs. But if I had to guess, I think it's likely going to stick with an 8-core layout. I would really, really, really hope for it to be at least Zen 4. At least. Currently, PlayStation 5 uses Zen 2. And even when that released in 2020, it was, on the older side. Still very capable, as we're seeing today with a lot of the games coming out, and a lot of games, continually being developed for Zen 2 based PS5 and Xbox. It's capable. It's just that, AMD advances, CPU technology advances so much year to year that it would be really nice to have a lot of the higher IPC and efficiency benefits of newer silicon processes. And that's also another interesting thing to consider is that currently the PlayStation 5 ships on processors that are on the 6 nanometer node from TSMC, which is also an older node. When it launched, though, it was 7 nanometers, which was um, the highest end at the time. But now 6 nanometers is kind of old. I think a lot of the highest end node that TSMC ships now is 3 nanometer and 3 nanometer advanced nodes. So most likely, I say most likely, but also it's what I would hope. But I think it is what would make sense is that whatever SoCs are going to be in these next PlayStations, they're likely shipping on 3 nanometer nodes. Now, by the time that comes out, it's probably going to be an older. I mean, it certainly will be an older node. I don't know, maybe 1 nanometer, 2 nanometer will be the thing by then, 2027, 2028. But the reality of the situation right now, at least, is that there's so many companies competing for the high-end silicon that TSMC produces, and TSMC is the only company in the world that produces that high-end silicon. So by the time that these consoles release, the highest end nodes that are probably going to be 1 or 2 nanometer are probably going to be completely booked out and bought out by companies like Nvidia, Qualcomm, Apple, um, AMD themselves, of course, for their own Radeon chips, Ryzen chips. Likely, they have to stay competitive. But the thing is, with Sony and Microsoft, they also do certainly have to stay competitive, but they have to really take cost consideration into account too, and also like production viability, and also being able to compete with the likes of Nvidia and Qualcomm, AMD, blah blah blah. Even though all these consoles are probably being made by AMD. But yeah, let's finish this right now. Those are my 2 cents. My rambling on this interesting article here. Yeah, let me know any of you guys' thoughts, if you can agree, if you disagree with anything I said, or if you have any other input. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully see you soon. Goodbye.